This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
It's Wednesday, July 27th. Thanks for hanging out with us here on Real Talk. Looking forward to the show today. Quite frankly, I'm not looking forward to some of the conversations we're going to have because we got to talk about some stuff that's just, there's a story that we're going to get to today. You've probably heard about it already. If not, it's not exactly our pleasure to put it on your radar, but this is real life kind of a stuff. We've seen a brand, an Alberta food brand, basically bury itself in about 10 seconds yesterday. I'm talking about Valbella Gourmet Foods. Chances are it's on your radar, but if not, I'm going to let you know. I will read an email that was sent by the heir to this ownership group. The story of this business, as we understand it, it's been around for about 40 years. Founded by a family, still family-owned, and now it's being run, as we understand it, by their son and daughter. Well, that is until last night. When an email went out from Jeff Von Rotz, whose email signature indicated that he was the owner of the company, but his family has been quick to clarify by way of his sister, in a really unfortunate position she is, that he's no longer part of the company. They say, and by the way, he was never an owner. The parents are still the owner. This guy's the president, but it was a homophobic, transphobic, hate-driven email, and I'm going to read it in just a second. I want to let you know it's going to be hard for some of you to hear. I think that we need to hear the words, if you haven't heard them yet, to have an informed conversation about this, but it's disgusting stuff. The organizers of Canmore Pride, if you're listening from elsewhere in Canada, just in case you didn't know, Canmore is just an absolute crown jewel of the Canadian Rockies, a beautiful community about 45 minutes outside of Calgary, just outside of Banff, and organizers of the Pride Festival presumably sent out a whole bunch of emails soliciting support for the Pride Festival from local businesses. Well, this guy responded. And he didn't just say, thanks but no thanks, or he didn't say we're unavailable, or he didn't just not reply. Instead, he smeared his hate and his ignorance all over the place for everybody to see. It's hard to wrap your mind around what the thinking might have been behind it. The answer probably is there wasn't much thinking, but reaction has been swift. As a ton of businesses have said we're no longer carrying Valbella, I would imagine a lot of other businesses that carry their products are probably calling emergency meetings today, as they have to make a very, in my mind, easy decision to distance themselves from these products. And then there are the personal stories, the people like me and like thousands of other people online that are saying, we have bought these products before, I have bought these products before, and we won't again, because it's something we just can't stand for. Dr. Kristopher Wells is going to join us in about a half hour from now to talk about this, but we'll also be able to integrate some of your comments in. You can leave them in the live chat if you're watching us do the show on YouTube. You know, it's about 8:35 Mountain Time right now, about 10:35 Eastern, or later. If you catch the podcast on demand, if you're watching on YouTube later, you can always send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I suspect, John, that Trash Talk, coming up a couple of days from now on Friday, may have some messages aimed maybe at this guy and maybe at the bigger picture of some of the comments, some of the, the hate that continues to exist. I was talking to Dr. Wells yesterday in the lead up to today's interview. We were corresponded just a little bit, and he said to me, this reiterates why pride is so important. We'll get his take on that. Plus, yesterday, if you caught the show, you know that journalist Denny Parody joined us live from Commonwealth Stadium. It's where thousands were gathering for an outdoor mass. The Pope, of course, was in Edmonton. This is part of his Canadian visit to apologize for the Catholic Church's involvement in Canada's residential schools. Aaron Paquette is an Edmonton city councillor. He's actually deputy mayor right now during the Pope's visit. He's also an artist and a proud Indigenous man. He was there to witness the apology in Maskwacis, as well as the Mass yesterday, and he's going to share his thoughts with us today. We're looking forward to that. Canada's former Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, Canada's most recent Conservative Prime Minister, is on the record now, officially endorsing a candidate for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. We'll get to that story, plus other stuff that's catching our attention. and we're going to take a break. We're going to take a deep breath and head out to the mountains, part of MyJasper Memories. It's a tradition every Wednesday here on the show. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm excited because we're doing something that maybe doesn't exactly align with where the seasons are at right now, but anytime I have a chance to show you firsthand point of view snowboarding footage from Marmot Basin, we're going to do it. So we're going to get into the snow today at the end of July. Love it. The show happens because of the support of amazing sponsors like Grandin Essentials, quality raw food. I often tell you that there's no bigger endorsement we can give you than to tell you who's feeding our family members. And when it comes to Moses, our boxer, Monroe, our lab, it's Grandin Essentials. Now you can shop now on their website, grandog.ca. I really recommend you spend some time on their blog. That's where they have articles posted like maybe why some of their clients, their customers, have moved on from kibble. How did they know it was time to go raw? What about camping with your raw-fed dog? What about other animals that might also be interested in getting into that food? They've got some great tips for those getting out into the backcountry, those enjoying the great outdoors. It's a family-owned business we're proud to partner with. You can order your Grandin Essentials quality raw food right now. The promo code REALTALK gets you 10% off your first-time order. And if you happen to live in Calgary, Edmonton, or Central Alberta, they'll deliver it weekly right to your door. Our friends at Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge want to remind you that they've got some great shopping tools on their websites. They know that buying a new vehicle can be a daunting experience, especially if it's been a while. Their sales team wants to make it as easy and painless as possible. So you can check out the how-to videos, financing, check out their build and price option. In other words, you want to do a total custom delivered vehicle that'll fit your family perfectly. You'll find them online or in person at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge. And Athabasca University wants to remind you that just because we're in the middle of summer, just because most of us think of going back to school in the fall, right now could be a perfect time for you to register at AU. Well, why is that? It's because they're not struck. It's set in stone. They're not locked into concrete with any sort of scheduling. You learn at your pace. You learn on your schedule. You need to take a week or 2 or 3 away for family vacations. Maybe it's a patio day and you don't feel like spending 8 hours poring over your textbooks or doing research online. Athabasca University is a perfect fit for the world-class accredited online programs and courses that suit your schedule and suit your lifestyle. You can learn more about Athabasca University online at athabascau.ca. Well, it's certainly, and this news cycle this week has been quite unusual with regards to it being in the middle of the summer. If you subscribe to our new show, Seriously, with Supriya and Ryan, the podcast just dropped about a half an hour ago, we talk about it. We talk about how in the middle to late stages of July, it's quite unusual to have competition for a leading story on national newscasts. You have a real culture problem facing Hockey Canada right now. We have some great and powerful emails from you on that. There's leadership races happening with political parties, federal and provincial. We've got committee hearings happening right now with a bunch of stuff, including that big Rogers outage that impacted millions of Canadians. And of course, the Pope is in Canada as well. Aaron Paquette is a 2-term city councillor representing the Northeast Ward Dene in the city of Edmonton. He's the first First Nations and Métis city councillor in Edmonton's history. He was appointed deputy mayor for the period of the Pope's visit to Canada. He's also an award-winning author and artist and a loud and proud voice for the people of Northeast Edmonton. If you happen to be watching us on YouTube, the background might be one of the best we've seen in a while. Councillor, welcome to the show. Are you in front of, is that one of your pieces you're sitting in front of right now? I think we got you muted right now. There we go. Oh, it's a fake background.
No, it's not a fake background.
No, yeah.
It's a real painting.
Yeah, is that one of your paintings?
Yeah.
Would you? It's absolutely stunning. Most
you want me to get out of the way?
Well,
I've heard that before.
Most people will hear this on the podcast, but for those that it might drive some people to YouTube to check it out. Is that a raven behind you? Would you tell us about what we're seeing?
Yeah, it's a image of the story of how the raven stole the sun and the moon, which is a trickster story. And the idea behind that is that we don't know the end of all things. We don't know if something is going to be good or bad or both. and that everything that we experience is a journey, and we have to take it in that way.
Absolutely. I mean, the history of storytelling, the oral history, the visual arts has been a huge part. I know of. Can I just say, you were on my radar many years ago as an artist first, as a politician later in life. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about right out of the gates here, you were there in Maskwacis. You were there. My understanding is that you were at the Mass yesterday, and we'll talk about that. But if people check out the Edmonton Arts Council website, and this isn't just a municipal story, this isn't just a regional story, this is a story of interest to people across the country. They'll be able to see your artist's journey, you and Sylvie Nadeau and the so-called Grandin murals, your history and your involvement as an artist, specifically relating to the imagery and the stories and the history of residential schools, goes back a long time. Would you tell us about it?
Yeah, I mean, with the work that you referenced, the idea was that in the 80s, a work was commissioned that showed sort of the hero story of Vital Grandin and of the Catholic Church here in this region. And a lot of people took exception to that because it seemed to, in their minds, glorify residential school, forced adoptions, breaking up families, Indigenous families. And so I was asked to create a counter mural, and I didn't like that term. I didn't like counter mural. So what I did is I created, in my mind, a conversation that if we had had an interpretation sort of set up down there, would have explained it, but instead that never happened. So the original painting eventually got removed. It's going to find a home somewhere, but it won't be in that station because it is so triggering for people who get off at the station and are confronted with that, especially folks who have experienced it.
Yeah, worth mentioning that the station was renamed as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that ties directly into this visit where, again, you've got the Pope coming to Canada, an historic visit, landing in Edmonton, never landing in Edmonton before. And it's usually Ottawa that's the gateway for dignitaries. And coming to issue an apology. Now, some people will accept the apology, some people won't, but a lot of people have been triggered and re-traumatized. And so as the Pope leaves Edmonton and moves on to the rest of his journey, we have to start asking ourselves, what's the aftermath? Because we have to, this didn't happen just to a people. It happened to a people, but it happened to individual children who spent their life as young children in pain, and then their adult lives in pain, who were abused physically, emotionally, and sexually. And so these are individual experiences. And so the reaction is going to be individual. There are things that will be common across the board. But I think that what we have to do is respect everyone's journey through this.
Can you put into words with us where your head and your heart, where your spirit was as you made your way down to Maskwacis, as you gathered with survivors, intergenerational survivors, Indigenous leaders, chiefs, grand chiefs, the Governor General, the Prime Minister, the Mayor of Edmonton, I mean, many dignitaries. I mean, obviously, millions of Canadians watched live some of the powerful things that happened. We're seeing right now, for those on YouTube, the red sash that made its way through. The visual of that just seared its place into most people's experience. I think the names of more than 4,000 children that either died or never returned home, whereabouts unknown, suspected but not known. I mean, how did you prepare yourself personally to attend?
Yeah, well, I am, along with my wife, we're the first generations in our families for, I think, 5 generations where we weren't taken from the home as children. And so that means our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents all experienced these things. And so we carry that generational trauma. Our children, despite our best efforts, will carry some of that generational trauma. And so that's not just us, that is across the board. And there are still Indigenous people who are being taken from their homes. And residential schools stopped trying, but over half the children in care in Canada are Indigenous, despite making up only a small percentage of the population. The math doesn't add up. It's ongoing. So what did I do to prepare for this is I prayed, I smudged, I sat in silence, I talked to my family. And I will tell you that being there had an emotional impact on me, a spiritual impact, a physical impact, and a mental impact. I was exhausted after the first day. And then because I've been declared deputy mayor during this visit, of course, I went to every other event. It's really fascinating because there was an apology, but it wasn't an apology for the church. It was an apology for individual actors within the church. And that's a very fine distinction, but a distinction that people noticed nonetheless. And I can understand why. I gave it some thought. And maybe a lot of people won't think about this, but the church has to present itself as infallible because it represents the body of Christ on earth, right? And so if the church admits fallibility, that goes against their doctrine. So you have to, if you're the Pope, not claim it's the church's responsibility, but people who are imperfect.
Yeah, Councillor, do you also think maybe that, and I don't want to get too into this because I don't want to take the attention away from where I think it needs to be, but I also wonder, I suspect that Vatican lawyers probably had a few runs through the apology, and conspicuously absent was any reference to sexual assault, sexual abuse. Of course, I can't
say for sure.
None of us can say anything on the record.
Just on a city councillor level here in Edmonton, Alberta, we definitely have lawyers vetting very serious things that we have to talk about. So, of course, I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think that's something that was an observation that was made by many survivors that were in attendance, and I think that it's something that demands to be noticed and demands to be discussed. You know what I really I appreciate the word. You're a contemplative person. We've spoken many times, and I know you choose your words carefully. And you didn't talk about the next steps. You talked about the aftermath of the Pope's visit. That's a very powerful word. That's a different angle on it.
Yeah, and I look, I can't speak for anyone, but I think that the Pope was sort of alluding to that as well. That there are things that now have to be done. So, of course, on a city level, the city is already committed to fulfilling the TRC calls to action as far as we can as a municipality. What we need is commitment from the provincial and federal governments. You know, what's really ironic, Ryan, and I'll speak freely, this is real talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
For security reasons around Sacred Heart Church in Edmonton's inner city here, they cleared the area. And what I mean by that is no one was allowed around there, especially people who are there every day because it's their home or the place where their friends are. And we're talking about homeless people suffering mental health and addictions. And the majority of those folks happen to be Indigenous because that is the aftermath of residential schools and breaking up families and communities. And so everyone who is coming through there, who is a dignitary, did not see that, did not see the living reality of the impacts of residential school and forced adoptions. I think that was a mistake, personally. I understand for security reasons, no one was around in the area, but boy, if you're talking about symbolism, there it is right there. So will we see concrete steps as we move forward, or are we going to clear the area out of sight, out of mind? It's heartbreaking because I know that a lot of your listeners and viewers will say, well, why isn't the city taking care of these folks who are suffering? If we could, we would, but we don't have the authority or the budget. This is squarely within the authority and budgets of the provincial government and the federal government. And yet we are the ones who are stepping up the most on a municipal level, despite not even having the tools. We can't provide healthcare because we're not a healthcare provider at the city. We can't provide addiction support. We can't provide mental health support. We can advocate for it. We can ask for it. And that's what we've been doing. But if we're serious about reconciliation, we need all hands on deck. The people you see in the streets who you say, oh, they don't even want my help, are kids who got help from institutions as children, and it destroyed them.
How did your experience at Mass yesterday contribute to the overall feelings and thoughts that you're obviously experiencing at a very deep level? How did that contribute to sort of your overall perspective that you're sharing with us today?
Well, it's important to note that a lot of people were very, very happy to see the Pope here. Even in my own Métis community, which is strongly Catholic, people were overjoyed that the Pope was here. But they also had the emotional reaction of the impact it had on their family and on their family's history here in Canada. So, it's such a big mix of emotion. But to look around the Commonwealth Stadium and to see all of those people hanging on every word, there was sort of a desire or a hope that the Pope would be able to educate a little bit more on the impacts that individuals within the Catholic Church have had on Indigenous communities and what that means going forward in order to educate his flock. That didn't happen. So that's up to us. That's up to you. I mean, you're doing it right now. So we're taking on that role. But boy, what an opportunity that would have been. And maybe he'll take that opportunity going forward, along with renouncing the papal bull that led to the doctrine of discovery, which is still used as a legal justification for all of the things that happened.
One of the things as a non-Indigenous person that as I've been reflecting on this is a sincere hope and confidence, quite frankly, that some of the language that the Pope invoked, while many people may feel, and that is absolutely their right to feel, that the apology didn't hit the points they wanted it to hit, or it was insufficient or incomplete, that there was enough of a condemnation, of a clear condemnation of the theory of residential schools, the administration of residential schools, the abuse at residential schools, that it can address and stop that assertion that continued to flare up over the years from people that would argue that many good things or many good people or not all priests and nuns, or you know what I mean? The apologists for it. And we see them in prominent positions. I mean, the Kris champion Dorchester Review, the guy that's tapped on the shoulder to rewrite Alberta's curriculum, is one of the loudest voices suggesting that residential schools did very little or no harm in many circumstances. And I hope, as a non-Indigenous person, that the Pope's condemnation of them in his apology at Maskwacis will do something to at least stop that narrative so that the collective conversation, the national conversation, can take a big step forward. Are you confident that that'll happen?
As a cynic, no. As someone who dedicates their life to public service every single day, I have to have hope, and I do. Sure. So I'm going to say it's possible. I was sitting there, and you mentioned Kris Champion helped write the curriculum or the proposed curriculum for the Alberta government. And, I was sitting a few seats away from our premier, and I know he's a devout Catholic, and I was watching him a little bit, wondering, is this message getting through? Do we understand that the Pope came to give an apology for something that actually did happen and did have the impacts that everyone says, and not the revised history that that curriculum is trying to push?
Is there anything that I haven't asked you about? If you're like me and probably millions of other people, this is probably a fluid thought exercise. Right, it's sort of like an evolution of. I guess what I'm saying is I'm just continuing to reflect on this, and I think the majority of people are. As the Pope leaves Edmonton, we can see right now if you're listening live, the plane is on the tarmac and he's on his way to his next stop, and now people will be reflecting on the visit as opposed to participating in the visit. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you want to put into the public discussion right now by way of this show? Okay,
let's do this. This is just the beginning. A lot of people are finding closure, but this is just the beginning. Mm-hmm. And you can say, well, what's in 2008 the beginning when Harper issued his apology? Tell me what has substantially happened regarding reconciliation since then. Mm-hmm. Not a heck of a lot. This is just the beginning. And it's up to your listeners. It's up to your viewers. It's up to the general public to demand these things. Because, hot tip, politicians do what the people loudly ask them to do. If they don't, they get turfed. They get thrown out. So be vocal, be loud, demand change, and understand the history. Residential schools, forced adoptions were designed to destroy a people, cultural genocide, and even physical genocide. That was the point. And it wasn't just the Catholic Church. It was our own government. And what a lot of people don't understand is that the same spirit that led to those horrific abuses also led to Indigenous people not being able to participate in the market in Canada for generations. Like an intentional move, Ryan, to create generational poverty and dependence. And you got a lot of people, who say very ignorant things because they don't know the history, and it's not their fault because it was never taught. Learn the history, talk about it. Talk about the fact that reservations were moved, and entire people were moved away from cities so that people in cities didn't have to interact with them, and to economically isolate people so that horrible things could be done to them. We have to turn the page. None of us are responsible for what happened, Ryan, but all of us have an incredible opportunity to decide what we do next. If there's a book about the history of Canada, we get to write the next chapters. What are we going to write? Are we going to be proud of it? And one last thought. These things happen because people dehumanize others. We see this happening and being played out by leaders calling their opponents deranged or making up lies in order to get power, when their job should be one of service and of enlightening rather than casting shadows over people's hearts and minds. That move, that kind of idea that someone else in your neighborhood could be less than human, leads to atrocity. And so unless we make a commitment that we are going to see each other as human beings, as worthy of love and respect, then what happened to the kids in residential school will happen again somewhere to someone's child. And I don't want it to be anyone's child. I don't want it to be your child. I don't want it to be my child. So until all children are safe, no child is safe. And that begins with adults acting like adults in a spirit of cooperation, love, and respect.
I've always had a ton of respect for you. You know that. And I sure appreciate the spirit of your comments and your willingness to get personal and talk to us about your experience over the past number of days and well before that. Aaron Paquette, councillor for the City of Edmonton, obviously a celebrated artist. Thanks for this.
Hey, thanks for having the conversation.
Yeah, you bet. You can let us know what you think. How is this resonating with you? Talk at RyanJesperson.com. I know this stuff is heavy. It's supposed to be. It needs to be. And I know that many of you are reflecting on that because you're letting us know that. We get some emails from people to talk at RyanJesperson.com that'll come in and just say, this is not to be read on the air. This isn't a comment for public consumption. Just wanted to let you know that interview hit me square between the eyes. That's what a guy said yesterday. That interview hit me square between the eyes. And we're grateful for it. We have the same experience here participating in them. Talking about real stuff and real life. And in this circumstance, real reconciliation. Now, the councillor mentioned former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. We're going to talk about him. We'll turn the page, take a look at another national news item in just a moment. And then Dr. Kristopher Wells to talk about this Valbella Gourmet Food disaster. That's easily one of the top stories across the country right now. Really. I mean, we heard from a real talker from Ontario that had heard about it last night. This just developed yesterday evening. We were at the carnival. We were at the fair.
My phone
as a family at K-Days. My phone went nuts. It started going nuts. I mean, this is a really interesting case study. That's coming up in just a second. These conversations happen because of sponsors that also believe in real talk, and that includes the team at Kubi Renewable Energy. If you check out kubienergy.ca today, you can get your free quote. If you've been thinking about putting solar up, whether it's on your residence, Maybe it's your barn. Maybe it's your industrial building. Whatever it is, Kubi's got it. Lots of experience, evidence of the cleanest installs you've ever seen. And, of course, their team is all dialed in on the paperwork stuff. So, for example, if you're looking at putting solar on your house and you've heard about this $40,000 interest-free loan from the feds, you don't have to do the digging. You don't have to fill out the forms. Kubi will do it for you. Plus, if you're an electrician or maybe an apprentice that's looking for an opportunity to join a dynamic team, Kubi is virtually always hiring. You can learn more at kubienergy.ca/careers. Same goes with the team at Apex Automation. They're putting out a call to Canada's most talented engineers. If the idea of providing intuitive, fully autonomous solutions to industry appeals to you, if you like the idea of personal and professional growth, if you're eager to be part of a team that supports you as a human being and as a professional, consider Apex Automation. You can check out the careers link on their website and check out some of the projects that they're working on at apexautomation.ca. I love making mentions like this with Kubi and Apex. These are innovative companies. I did say love making. Thanks, John. Nicely done.
Happy
hump day. Are you Beavis or Butthead today? But these are the groups. I mean, this is optimism. These are growing industries, and they're looking for talented professionals. We're really proud to partner with these companies. That includes the team at Park Power as well, your friendly local utilities provider. They're looking out for you. They're covering your back. If you haven't heard, there's this electricity rebate that's going on right now. If you live in the province of Alberta, where we do this electricity rebate program that people are talking about, there's some controversy around it. Who's qualifying, who's not, who's getting the rebate, who's not receiving the rebate. But guess what? There's another storyline that's being under-discussed, and that's that scam artists are at play. Park Power has got your back. You can check out their blog post at the bottom of their page, parkpower.ca, to learn how you can protect yourself from being scammed. And don't forget, you can check rates, compare what you're paying now to what you could be paying with Park Power at parkpower.ca. The promo code 2022-RealTalk knocks $70 off your very first bill. Well, it was maybe only a matter of time until the former Prime Minister of Canada chimed in on the Conservative Party of Canada's leadership race, although not a guarantee, right? Oftentimes, former leaders of parties will say, I'm not getting involved in this one. I'm going to let it play out. I'm not going to endorse a candidate. Well, the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, of course, the most recent Conservative Prime Minister, has gone on the record, and I'm sure that his selection is not going to surprise anybody. You knew it wasn't going to be Jean Charest, but Stephen Harper making it official by way of video with some pretty fancy elevator music behind it. Check it out.
In this particular race, there's been a lot of speculation about whom I support or do not support and why. So it may be useful for my fellow party members to hear my views straight from me. It's a strong field, but one candidate has garnered disproportionate attention. Pierre Poilievre was a strong minister in my government. In the past several years, he's been our party's most vocal and effective critic of the Trudeau Liberals. He's been talking about the issues, especially the economic issues, that matter: slow growth, debt, inflation, lack of job and housing opportunities, and the need to fix the institutions that are failing Canadian families. He's proposing answers rooted in sound conservative ideas, but ones adapted for today's realities. That's why he has the strong support of our caucus and our existing membership, and why he is bringing the most new members and a new generation into our party.
The music in the background.
Dun, 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 dun. Although music does pump up any segment.
It does.
Yeah, a nice music bed is going to grab people's attention. I don't think that this is a big surprise. Tony on the live chat says, well, Harper's last two endorsements didn't fare too well. Andrew Scheer, Jason Kenney, epic failures. I mean, Kenney did unite the two parties and become premier. He did. I'm not saying that he was a great premier, but with regards to how you gauge success, getting elected would be number one. So, but yeah, the legacy, probably nothing to write home about. Tony says, go ahead and endorse Pierre and we can watch him fail yet again. I'm curious to see how this is all going to play out. Now, we really dug into it today. Here's another plug for Seriously, our new show, Supreme and I. It comes out every Wednesday. It's already out, this Wednesday's edition. That's because John and I wake up at 5 o'clock on Wednesdays, and we get this thing sent out. But we really take this on. We really examine the impact of Stephen Harper's endorsement of Pierre Poilievre. And the question that Supriya asked, which is a good one, is with so many people talking about whether or not the Conservatives are divided in Canada, is there any actual evidence to that effect? She actually makes the argument that if you think about it, that Canada's Conservatives are quite united. If you look at the numbers, they're united in their disdain for Jean Charest. The guy's getting booed at leadership debates, right? They're united in their dismissal of Patrick Brown. At least they appear to be. That story didn't really flare up like I think Mr. Brown's camp hoped it would. If you missed my conversation with him, you can check it out in our archives. It appears as though the Conservatives are prepared. I mean, let's forego the final month of this leadership and let's just name Pierre leader so we can get on with it and start talking about the federal parties. Let's start talking about what the next federal election looks like. So you can download Seriously and check it out. I'm also curious to know what you think the biggest impact of Stephen Harper's endorsement is going to be. It feels to me, and I described this in Seriously, like watching Usain Bolt run for Jamaica back in the day, where before the race was even run, everybody knew that unless he fell and sprained his ankle, he was going to be the winner. And the only real question was whether or not he was going to break his world record from before, when he broke it the previous time from his world record from before. You remember that era in men's 100 meters and men's 200 meters with Usain Bolt? It's kind of what it feels like right now. Now, someone's going to tweet that I'm comparing Usain Bolt to Pierre Poilievre or Pierre Poilievre to Usain Bolt, but this race appears to be a runaway. Jean Charest's not done, though. He's not dead yet. Have you seen this from his campaign? They want to put a jovial face on him. They're working hard to capitalize on his likability factor, and so they go to the late night talk show well and draw out some mean tweets.
Okay, so we're doing mean tweets, and I'm going to subject myself to this, and I'm going to start with this. I woke up this morning looking like Jean Charest circa 1989. My hair is officially out of control. Well, welcome to the world of Jean Charest. I wake up, I'm 89, 99, 209, 29. Every morning, the hair's out of control. Good luck. Here's the next one. Charest has the personality of a stick. You know what? I have a very nice personality. The only people who I stuck it to, by the way, are separatists, so nothing wrong with that. And the next mean tweet, as Prime Minister, I will make cottage cheese pierogies available at all McDonald's restaurants in our country. See, we can all pretend for a while. Hey, it's a deal. You think a country that has cottage cheese pierogies can be unhappy? No, sir. Next mean tweet. You know Jean Charest, that evil, right-wing, quasi-fascist former Liberal Premier of Quebec? That guy, Jesus. Okay, so we know who you're voting for. You should retire already. No one wants you as leader of a conga line, never mind a country. you get full points for your humor. Intelligence, that's another story.
Is it going to work? I don't know. It made us smile.
It was funny.
It was funny. It was a decent effort, but I don't think it's the type of thing that's going to resonate and demonstrably change what seems to be inevitable results of this leadership race. Nick chiming in to say, hey, I like cottage cheese pierogies, and who doesn't, right? Donna says, I actually kind of get a kick out of the guy. Yeah, but is that what's going to drive someone like Donna to buy a membership, to vote for Jean Charest in the leadership, and to vote for him again the next federal election? I don't know. Jill says Charest is, of course, more popular across the country. If Pierre truly was the superior candidate and had this in the bag, the CPC wouldn't be working so hard to help him win. First Patrick Brown goes, now this. It's an interesting point. We're going to get to a story that twisted my stomach up last night, and I suspect that our next guest will feel the same way. We're going to talk about Valbella Gourmet Foods. We're going to talk about Hockey Canada. We're going to talk about monkeypox and whatever else when our good friend Dr. Kristopher Wells joins us in just a second. These conversations are made possible by sponsors like Local Environmental Services. It was awesome. I mentioned we were at the carnival last night at the fair. I saw some people repping a couple local T-shirts with their new brand. Yeah, they were far enough away that I wasn't able to catch up with them. I wanted to pick their brains. I don't know if they were staff members or what it was, but this company is all about plugging itself into community, right? In the communities that they live in and work in, they deliver better service, better prices, more support for local causes. There's so much more than just garbage. You can get a quote today. You can learn more about what a business relationship with them looks like, whether you need water hauling, recycling, landfill, temporary or more permanent bins, vacuum truck fencing, you name it. Local Environmental's got you covered. And if you need to get something off your chest, again, they proudly present Trash Talk here on Real Talk every Friday. You can send us an email via our website at ryanjesperson.com. Mike and his team at Eden Landscaping want to remind you that no matter what your landscape woe is, they've got the solution. As a matter of fact, John, they'll have you saying, "Whoa, that's such a great job," once they finish with your excavation or perhaps your water installation. Maybe you want to get one of those features with like the koi ponds that everybody buzzes about, an outdoor kitchen with a Forno pizza oven, whatever you're dreaming of, they can bring that outdoor space to life like they have done as a proud family-owned business for more than 2 decades. You can check out Eden Landscaping. Get in touch with them. Check out their portfolio online at landscapeedmonton.ca. And what would be a Real Talk episode without a shout-out to the great teams at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park? This week, I've been celebrating, personally, the Buster Bar. I haven't been able to help myself. As a matter of fact, I've crushed a couple of them. The layer after layer of chocolatey fudge peanuts, the DQ soft serve dipped in luscious chocolatey coating. You can, of course, find Buster Bars individually or in convenient boxes of 6 at the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. Dr. Kristopher Wells, a good friend of the show and a personal friend of mine, is the Canada Research Chair for the Public Understanding of Sexual and Gender Minority Youth at MacEwan University in our home city of Edmonton. He's the editor for the Journal of LGBT Youth, and he's the co-founder of Pride Tape. An incredible, I think that it started as a bit of an experiment, Dr. Wells, that really got people in the hockey community talking about equity and inclusion. It's been one of the most successful brand exercises that I've ever seen. It's won awards around the world. It's a real pleasure to welcome you to Real Talk. Thanks for making time for us this morning.
Good morning. Perfect day for a dilly bar for sure.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, I haven't actually read, you and I were, I want to note, you and I were going to be talking on the show before this whole Valbella story broke last night. You were already scheduled. You were already going to be talking to me. I'm grateful that you're here to provide your perspective. I've not yet read this email because I wanted to brace the audience for it. I wanted to have some context behind it, but most importantly, I wanted people to know exactly what we're talking about. So before we get into this, is there anything that you want to say? Is there anything that you think is important to consider before we get to these words that have seared themselves into the minds of probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that have seen it by now?
I think just people to be prepared for what they're going to hear and put yourself in the position of someone who is a member of the trans or the non-binary community and what it means to them to know that these kinds of attitudes are in our community.
So this is the backstory. Canmore Pride organizers, presumably approaching many different businesses in their neck of the woods in Canmore and the surrounding mountain towns, and they're organizing the Pride Festival that's well attended, that's celebratory, that is inherently positive and inclusive. And they reach out to the company Valbella Gourmet Foods, which a lot of people know. Valbella is represented in grocery stores. It's represented in restaurants. I personally have bought Valbella sausages and smokies many times. They reach out to Valbella Gourmet Foods, presumably asking for some sort of involvement or some sort of donation, and they get this letter back from Jeff Von Rotz, whose email signature says he's the owner. His family has since clarified that while he was the company's president up until last night, he never was an owner. If that matters, I don't know. And his email reads, "Good morning." He says, "I would address you by name, but I don't know it as you simply signed with a K." Kind of a hostile opener. He says, "I'm sorry to say, but you could not pay me to sponsor anything to do with child grooming trannies. Please keep these sick people away from the children of this community. You should be disgusted with yourselves. He goes on to say, I'm sure there's some woke organization mentally ill enough to help you with your event, but it isn't Valbella's. Thanks, Jeff. Now, this was put on my radar by food writer, author Julie Van Rosendahl, who confirmed with Canmore Pride organizers that it was, in fact, legit. And once she put it out there, it spread like wildfire. Now, it twists my stomach. What does it do to you, Kris?
Well, a couple things. It's disheartening, it's demoralizing, and I think rightly so. We saw the backlash from the community, who I think if there's a positive out of this story, that's it. There's so much going on in this kind of email about these harmful stereotypes that somehow trans individuals are predators or monsters who are coming after children. Those of us in the LGBT community, I think we've heard this sort of trope for decades upon decades, that, all the way back to Anita Bryant coming on her Save Our Children crusade that came to Edmonton and Calgary in the late 1970s, was all based in the threat that the LGBTQ community poses to children and poses to our society. And the slogan they used is, because they can't reproduce, they need to recruit. And, it's incredibly harmful, because these kind of stereotypes lead to a process of dehumanization that leads to violence, which is really why I think that the RCMP should be involved in a situation like this and investigating this as a hate incident. It might not meet the threshold of a hate crime, but I think it's important that they go and they talk to this individual and talk to this company and say, that this kind of language is, problematic, because it can lead to more serious consequences of violence.
You said something to me yesterday when we were talking, and I mean, it seems like such an obvious statement, but it's so important to amplify it publicly. You said a story like this reiterates the importance of pride.
Yeah, absolutely. Our work is not done. And this just shows the kind of, education that still needs to happen, why pride is important, why people are rallying around Canmore Pride, and a lot of credit to them for turning, something so negative and disheartening into something, positive for that community. And I think, the people at Valbella are learning an important lesson too. They're losing sponsors, they're losing customers at a really rapid kind of rate. And I think they need to do a lot more than just simply say, that they're sorry and that this person is no longer working for the organization, but, need to make a commitment to repair trust and to work alongside the LGBT community. And really, it's pretty clear from this kind of statement that there's a culture problem within that organization.
Yeah, to say the least. We're talking about culture a lot these days, specifically in the context of hockey and hockey culture. I think people know by now, if they're a regular listener to this show, if they pay attention to the news cycle whatsoever, they know that there are horrific allegations of sexual assault, of rape, facing unnamed to this point members of World Junior national teams, men's under 20 national teams, specifically from 2003 and 2018. I think that the understanding is that the problem in hockey and maybe in sport, we talk about toxic masculinity, we talk about rape culture, is much bigger than just the sport of hockey. But quite rightfully and fairly, people are talking about hockey right now. You have specific experience, a ton of it, in working to change and impact and improve the culture of hockey through your Pride Tape venture and other work that you've done. How are you wrapping your mind around what you're seeing right now? Statements from Canada's top women players, a call for the resignation of Hockey Canada's new CEO. Where's your head at with it all?
Yeah, I think these are both examples of culture problems within organizations, and often the lack of diversity that exists within those leadership circles. First, to identify that these are problems when they present themselves, and that to have the courage of leadership to enact change. And a big part of that change is having diverse people around the table. And I think that's why a lot of people, we saw Sheldon Kennedy yesterday come out and say, we've lost confidence in the leadership of Hockey Canada and the board. And they all need to either resign or be removed. And we need to start over. We need women in those positions of leadership around the table. We need experts who understand, sexualized violence and how it operates and how it begins with the kind of things we're talking about, with this dehumanizing or inappropriate language where jokes become normalized and accepted part of the culture that then lead to these kind of horrific incidences and behaviors. It is all connected, and it's all part of a larger systemic pattern. And you can't change an organization overnight. We tried subtle approaches through things like Pride Tape to show inclusiveness and to promote diversity. But as we always say with the Pride Tape project, just wrapping your stick with Pride Tape is only the first step. And it's probably the easiest step that you can take. But we still see people who even refuse to do that. Look at another example in sport of Australian rugby, and where they're having Pride Night, and a bunch of the players refuse to wear the jerseys.
Really?
And and we've seen this happen in the NHL where players and others refuse to use Pride Tape. And at this point, you leave it as a choice. We don't want to drag people along, but this is really where the leadership needs to come in and educate and talk about why this is important. And how diversity is a value for not only the team and the league, but the sport and a larger part of our society.
I just, the name Luke Prokop jumped into my mind. Obviously a highly touted prospect, a big strapping young defenseman for the Nashville Predators. And as far as I can tell, as far as I can remember, I think the first pro hockey player to come out loud and proud. The impact, I saw an interview with him a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure if you saw it, Doc, but he's talking about how he says he's playing better hockey now since he came out. He says it had he says it had a huge impact on his mindset and just everything about him. He feels, I don't want to put words into his mouth. These weren't his words, but it almost seems like it allowed him to release something, that's allowed him to become a better hockey player. Michelle is watching right now. She says, 2003, 2018. She says, and probably every damn team in between, right? I think that it's widely understood and acknowledged that this is probably not a one-off or two-off type situation, but still, people are going to get defensive. We see it. I see it on social media. I see it in the comments. I see it in emails we've received. People saying they feel like it's not fair to paint a whole sport or to paint a whole community or to paint a whole country, for that matter, with one brush. People don't want to have the conversation about toxic culture or toxic masculinity. How do you propose that these conversations happen, whether they're around dinner tables or whether they're on buses, on road trips, or in locker rooms? What would you suggest?
Well, perhaps it's no surprise that people don't want to talk about this in hockey, because hockey remains one of the most privileged sports that exist, and just look at hockey, and a lot of that is white male cisgender privilege, right? And when you're trying to challenge that, people get very resistant, because they feel that by letting other people into the sport or the conversation, that somehow, right, they're losing something. They're losing their power. They're losing their advantage, right? And we've seen this with the Don Cherries of the world and others, where hockey culture needs to change. We need to change the language that's used. We need to address the violence in the sport, and the fact that people like Luke, who have the courage to come out, it's remarkable, and he's leading change, but that can't all be on his own back, right? We have to come alongside, and the organizations have to come alongside, because Luke is one person who's made it, right? And his journey is not even over; it's just beginning.
Yeah, just starting.
How many other Luke Prokops never made it that far? Were pushed out, tuned out, or dropped out of the game that they love because of the culture, because they felt that they can never be themselves. And as we know it, for elite athletes, that ability of being yourself can mean all the difference, from last place to first place, from being off the podium to being on the podium. Luke has said that. Mark Tewksbury has said that in swimming. That's what got him the Olympic medal. Was he finally felt that a weight had been lifted off himself, right? Despite all the training and all the coaching, it was that authenticity that finally you could just put all of your energy into your performance, rather than trying to have to hide who you are in the locker room or elsewhere.
Sometimes we talk about these competitive news cycles, and there can be stories happening or things going on that are flying under the radar a little bit, and not nobody's paying attention to them, but maybe it's not part of public discussion. And I'm going to acknowledge that I feel like I have limited bandwidth and I've not paid enough attention to what's going on with monkeypox. We're focusing on COVID and we're focusing on everything else, but it's a story that's becoming more and more relevant. But there's a specific angle, and maybe even more specifically pertaining to our home province of Alberta, but federally speaking as well, around vaccination programs specifically for gay or bi men. Can you take us into this? Let us know what we need to know, and what are you seeing in even your personal circles? You told me you have friends that are traveling out of province to get healthcare services.
Yeah, it's very concerning. We've been watching monkeypox for some time, and the initial outbreaks, and we started to see clusters happening within the gay male and what we call the MSM environment, men who have sex with men who maybe don't identify as gay or bisexual, and for all kinds of reasons of stigma and culture, etc. That this initially seemed to be clustered, and in fact that's where we're seeing the spread. 99% of the monkeypox is outside of Africa, is within the gay male and bisexual and MSM community. This reminds me of the early days of HIV and AIDS, and the fact that people aren't talking about this, that governments have been slow to respond, and that includes our government here in Alberta. For some time we've been asking, when is a targeted vaccination program going to come for the LGBTQ community? And we see it. It's happened in Vancouver. It's happened in Ontario and Quebec. Do we need to wait for a massive outbreak before we see action? I think we need to be, proactive rather than reactive. And people are taking whatever measures they can to protect themselves. So, as you mentioned, I know people who are Vancouver Pride is coming up this August long weekend, and who are flying out to Vancouver, and the first stop they're making is at the health clinic to get a vaccine, because they want to protect themselves. They want to protect the larger community, and they can't get it in Alberta. And of course, these are very privileged people who have the means to be able to do that. But right now, I couldn't walk into a pharmacy or a doctor's office and ask for the vaccine, and even want to pay for the vaccine, because our government is not making it available. So I hope within the next few days we're going to see a change here for that. Let's get those, as we learned, trust the science, get those vaccines in people's arms, and encourage people not only to protect themselves, but to protect their communities.
Yeah. I mean, you assume that wheels are in motion on issues impacting public health, but like you've reiterated before, it's not unprecedented that a government displays some form of essentially indifference when it comes to a health crisis that's emerging or that's clearly evident.
Well, and we know the vaccines are here. The federal government has, issued over 70,000 vaccines to provinces and territories. We don't even know how many of them are in Alberta, and what's happening with those vaccines. How long do they last? What's the distribution plan? This kind of slow response. We saw it with COVID. We're seeing it with, monkeypox, which, let's take this seriously. It's not fatal, and it's not as significant as COVID. But the World Health Organization has said monkeypox is now at the level of an international public health emergency. So, what's our response? This is why we have a Minister of Health. And, if the minister needs guidance, right, we're here and we're willing to work alongside the minister. And, we need to make sure that people are not seeing this as a gay disease, because, diseases don't know a sexual orientation or a gender identity. But we need to make sure that there's education, and we're working alongside, these vulnerable communities.
I know you're pretty excited about an event that's coming up in just over a week from now. Edmonton's Ice Districts, I saw making this announcement. Pride 365, the Battle of Alberta, returning for the inaugural Pride Cup on August 6th. I love seeing former Oilers attendee Ben Scrivens there helping support it. That guy's hair is looking unbelievable right now. But look at these smiles smeared across faces. People are pretty excited about it.
I asked Ben if he's angling for a role in Star Wars reboot or something,
Yeah.
as a Jedi there with the hair going on.
You know what was so funny? He was supporting, not to derail our conversation, but just he was supporting this Alzheimer's Pro-Am, this hockey tournament that I played in, I think back in February or whenever it was. I don't remember. Maybe it was April. Who knows? And anyway, but you know when you know someone, but you just can't place it? And it was the hair. He's got this long flowing hair, and I'm looking up there and I'm going, who is that guy? I know that guy. And then someone leans over and says, that's Ben Scrivens. I went, oh my gosh, it's a good look on him. But how cool is it to see him supporting this, and how excited are you about this event?
Yeah, and this ties back to what we were talking about, hockey culture and how do you change culture, right? You work alongside communities, you host events like this. And so full credit to, the Edmonton Oilers that are putting a lot of resources and time and talent to make this happen, to work, alongside the LGBT community. We've got our Pride Tape project, our Center for Sexual and Gender Diversity at MacEwan, and it's a showcase about growing the game of hockey. And we're excited to have another Battle of Alberta. We saw what the last one looked like after 31 years, and so we're bringing the two LGBTQ ice hockey teams together, the Edmonton Rage and the Calgary Pioneers, and we've got a ball hockey tournament. We've got a brand new Pride Cup we're excited to unveil at the event. There'll be entertainment. It's family focused. It's free. It's on the plaza. It's a great way to come out and just show your support. Not only for the LGBT community, but for the sport of hockey, and for diversity and inclusion within our community. So we hope it'll just be a fun time, and we hope that this will turn into an annual event, because as the event says, pride is something we need, and as from the examples we've talked about today, is something we need to be celebrating all year round. It just doesn't happen in the month of June or on a particular week or a day, but it's something that we need to be actively encouraging within all of our communities.
Yeah, it's like, to bring this conversation kind of full circle, and you see this email, and again, like we were like walking or surrounded by like Ferris wheels and rides and cotton candy as my phone's just going crazy. And so I'm like, what is this? And I read this, and I just felt this like disgusting feeling, right? Like you just read this and you're like, what the fuck? And then honestly, part of me goes, good. Like I tweeted about it. I said, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Like, good. Now people, you know what? Like, I'm glad I won't spend another $1 there. I'm not glad for how the message is going to make people feel. I'm not glad that it's evidence that these attitudes persist. But I am glad that it gives us a reminder, right? It fuels our resolve, whether you're gay, straight, bi, otherwise, whoever you are, whomever you love, it reminds us that there's still work to be done. And I know it comes across as a little bit cliche, Kris, but it's true. And I think that this is evidence last night into today.
Yeah, exactly. The old adage is we get the communities we're willing to build, right? And so what kind of community do we want to live in? And, when situations like this come, whether they're, we're dealing with this crisis in hockey, we're dealing with emails and attitudes like this in our community, where we're dealing with government indifference or denial, right? We have to hold people accountable, and then we have to roll up our sleeves and be willing to do the work, to bring forward the solutions, to be able to stand beside, those organizations and individuals that truly want to change. And if you don't want to change, well, then you got to be able to deal with the consequences. And a part of the challenge we're dealing with in this new social media age is, there's so much misinformation and stereotypes that are gaining traction. So we also have to speak out with truth, with evidence to help, lead the way. And we can't be afraid sometimes to step forward and say, that's wrong and that's not acceptable.
Yeah. Nothing but love for you, my man. It's nice to see your face again. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And you should also check out K-Days that's coming up, right? They're hosting a Pride Day, I think on Friday. So it's great to see more organizations stepping forward and saying, it's important for us to celebrate this diversity in the community, and we're proud to do so.
Yeah. I do not recommend crushing a belly full of cotton candy and getting on the Gravitron immediately after. I'm still feeling that. But other than that, I do recommend checking out K-Days. We had a blast last night. You going to be there, obviously?
I'm hoping to stop by. You know, the great thing is there's so much going on. I'm excited for Folk Fest. Fringe is going to start soon, and this is the city we love, right? There's something to do every night, everywhere, and you know, the weather's good. Get out on a patio, bring your dog, and you know, let's just enjoy our community.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Kris. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
We got an email from Heather to talk@ryanjesperson.com about Hockey Canada. And the subject line reads Hockey Canada and toxic masculinity. She says, Real Talk, thanks for addressing the issue of toxic masculinity within Canada's hockey culture. As the single mother of a son who grew up playing hockey in small-town Alberta, I often found it difficult to navigate the hockey world as the ingrained toxic masculinity seemed to rule. And anybody who spoke out about it was, quite frankly, ostracized. And while my son absolutely loved playing the sport, I hated it, as I knew every trip to the rink would result in some negative comment from a coach or other parent who felt it was okay to disparage anybody who didn't fit the so-called hockey mold. Coaches in our town were typically well-meaning, but untrained volunteers with very few leadership skills, and there were instances of verbal and emotional abuse toward the players. They were the norm, in fact. She says, I often questioned this approach. As a teacher, I knew that there were many other ways to lead and motivate youngsters. Heather says, after one incident of horrific verbal abuse toward my son by his coach, I took a stand on the issue and sent a formal complaint to Hockey Canada and our local board, which did intervene. And they actually suspended the coach for abusive behavior for a week. She says, upon his return, there was no change, perceivably or otherwise, in behavior from the coach, no further intervention from the hockey board, let alone Hockey Canada. And my son and myself actually became targets of the coach's anger. Thankfully, it was near the end of the season, but I had to pull my son from the team to ensure his mental well-being. And even after this behavior was flagged, the board, Hockey Canada, allowed this individual to return to coach in future years. And it seems to me like the end result is more important, maybe, like winning, than individual behaviors. And it seems to me, based on my personal experience, that Hockey Canada is okay with that. Heather says, I'm hopeful that by identifying this issue and talking about it, that culture starts to change. And we can see much more positive experiences for everybody involved in hockey in Canada. Our young hockey players deserve better, and parents shouldn't have to fight so hard to ensure that off-ice skills and behaviors are appropriate at every level. That from Heather. I appreciate that. Don't forget, every email we get is considered for our email of the month, and we give away one of these official Real Talk studio mugs to the author of what we believe to be one of the more or most impactful emails that we see every month. Every Wednesday, we have an opportunity to remind ourselves of the beauty and the wonder that exists in Canada's Rocky Mountains, specifically in Jasper National Park. It's MyJasper Memories, presented by our friends at Tourism Jasper. And today, though it may not be the exact sport you're thinking of at this time of year, I'm very excited to shine the spotlight on skiing and snowboarding. Well, why at the end of July, do you ask? Well, Marmot Basin, you know Marmot Basin, one of the greatest North American destinations for those that love to shred. Whether you're one plank or two, whether you're young or old, I have no doubt you'll be excited to hear that Marmot Basin is now part of the Mountain Collective. What's that? Well, Mountain Collective destinations have been named the best winter destinations on the planet. These include ski spots like Jackson Hole in Wyoming, Chamonix in France, Niseko United in Japan, and now Marmot Basin in Jasper National Park. So when you buy a Mountain Collective pass, it gives you 2 days of stellar skiing at each of the 24 dream destinations included in the collective, plus 50% off lift tickets, all additional days, no blackout dates. Doesn't matter if it's high season, you're still getting 50% off. Now, if you're a Marmot Basin season pass holder, you can now get 50% off all other Mountain Collective destinations, also without any blackout dates. You can get your pass and start planning your next winter adventure. Never too early to start planning at skimarmot.com. I know it feels a little early to be thinking about skiing or snowboarding. If you're like me, you think about it all the time. But this is actually the best time to buy ski passes. So a big shout out to our friends at Marmot Basin, and congratulations on becoming part of the Mountain Collective. Now, we invite you to send and post your photos, your videos of your Jasper experiences, your MyJasper memories, and that's exactly what Brian and Laurie did just a couple of days ago. They write in to say, we just wanted to share with you our Jasper memories. They say it's actually an update to a positive reflection that you read for us back in November. Laurie had just rung the bell. The minute I read this, John, I knew exactly what they were talking about. She had finished her cancer treatments. They said, well, that day was not the end of Laurie's cancer journey, but it's a continuation of a long and slow recovery. She started with a 9-step program. That's the number of steps that takes you down to the basement in our house. At the beginning of this 9-step journey, she required to stop halfway through to catch her breath at the 5-stair mark. That was 8 months ago. They say, well, we're thrilled to let you know we celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary in Jasper just a short time ago, and part of that included the Jasper Sky Tram. Put us on top of Whistler Mountain, an experience on its own, but just the start. We met some wonderful people, shared stories, and learned that if the world was run by average, ordinary, caring, empathetic people, everything would be fine. Now, it's hard to explain, says Brian, how it feels to watch your soulmate inch her way up a mountain, trying to make it to the top, knowing the pain she's experiencing with every step. But I was thinking to myself that this is life, one step at a time. We didn't make it to the top that day, but we will. We plan on spending our 31st wedding anniversary on top of Whistler's Mountain. That's an amazing MyJasper memory from Brian and Laurie. We thank you for sharing it with us. Use the hashtags MyJasper and Real Talk RJ on Twitter or Instagram, and your Jasper memory could be featured right here every Wednesday on Real Talk. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we're going to check in with the good friend Brandy Morin, who's been covering the Pope's journey across Canada. We want to offer you that comprehensive coverage in real terms. What does it mean to the people experiencing it firsthand? We expect that we're going to speak with advocate Sheldon Kennedy either tomorrow or Friday, and I know we've been waiting to check in with Canada's Minister of Sport. They say that's going to be Friday morning here on Real Talk. Make sure you mark your calendar, and we'll see you between now and then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson.
Executive producer, Josh Dunford. Technical producer, John Hicks. General manager, Katie Cook-Shivers. Account coordinator, Lawrence Derlego. Human resources, Lena Shepard.
Website design, Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali,
Brandy Morin,
Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is the flagship property of Relay Communications Group Incorporated. All rights reserved. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.